Christmas is a great time for homebrewers to get creative and make festive beers. Last year I made a chocolate orange milk stout, which I was really pleased with. I have to say I should have drank them all much closer to Christmas last year, as they have now developed into bottle bombs. This year I wanted to try out making a Christmas ale using fresh ginger and fresh cinnamon to really give us those classic Christmas flavours. My aim with this beer was to make something Christmassy, but not undrinkable and like a bit too sickly because it's gone a bit too wild with the Christmas flavours. The base recipe for this beer is a strong English bitter, as I thought it would be quite nice to have something very boozy for Christmas Day. So this is going to end up around 7%. Not only am I adding fresh ginger and fresh cinnamon, but I also wanted to add honey. Again, it's giving more of those Christmassy flavours as well as increasing the ABV. So on the brew day itself, the only water treatment that I did was to use a Campden tablet in the water, so to get rid of the chlorine. The tap water that I get is very close to the London water profile, and that's quite good for bitters and dark beers. So I didn't feel like I really needed to adjust the water, although I did lower the pH using lactic acid during the mash. So to get about 5.6 as my pH, though to be honest, if I was making this again, I think I would make that lower. Now I have to say that my malt bill is not typical when it comes to a bitter, but I had some Europils that I really wanted to use up, and so that was my main base malt. But you can swap it out for something like Maris Otter to make it a bit more traditional with an English bitter. So my base malt was 5 kilograms of Europils. I added 500 grams of Torrefied Wheat for body and head retention. I added 200 grams of Flaked Barley for body. If I was making this again, I probably would actually increase that a bit more. I also added 120 grams of Caramalt for colour, and also to add a slight toffee note, which I feel like will add to the Christmassiness of this beer. I used 110 grams of Melanoidin. As I wasn't using Maris Otter, I wanted to use something to increase the biscuity notes, and so that malt can do so. My next malt was just 60 grams of rye malt for colour, and then 50 grams of roasted barley, again for colour. I kept my hop additions incredibly simple, adding 50 grams of Fuggle at the start of the boil, which was 60 minutes long, and then adding another 50 grams 15 minutes before the end of the boil. Fuggle or Fuggle, or however you want to pronounce it, is very traditional when it comes to English bitters and works perfectly in a beer like this. After much deliberation as to what to do with the cinnamon and the ginger, I went for boiling it for the entire 60 minutes of the boil. I chopped up the ginger into chunks and broke up the cinnamon sticks and added it to a mesh bag. I used 30 grams of both the ginger and the cinnamon. There's loads of different opinions as to when you should add spices like these. Some people opt to add them late in the boil, and some would say that you should actually add it to the fermenter, almost like how you would a dry hop. But it's entirely up to you. It's worth an experiment to see what works best for you, but I just went for the boil as I thought that'd be the easiest way to do it, and I'd read multiple recipes where this seems to be absolutely fine to do. Next, I prepared my 500 grams of honey, which had solidified. So I measured it into a bowl and then added just a little bit of hot water, stirred it up together so that it was smoother, as I didn't want a big lump of honey to drop into the boiling liquid and potentially burn. I added the honey at flameout, as that helps to maximize the amount of honey flavor that you get from it. Although again, this is another thing which you could add in the fermenter if you wanted. So once my mash was over, I squeezed the grain bag and let it drip for 15 minutes, whilst also starting to get the boil going. Once we were up to temp, I then added the first hop addition as well as the spices. This made the house smell incredible. It actually made my wife very hungry and she was desperate for a mince pie after this. Adding the final hop addition 15 minutes before the end, as well as putting in my copper cooling coil so that that could sanitize. 5 minutes after that, I then added yeast nutrient as well as Irish moss The yeast nutrient is to help ensure a healthy fermentation. The Irish moss helps to make the beer clearer. So right at the end of the boil, I then added in my honey, stirred it to make sure that it was completely incorporated, and then started cooling down my wort to my target temperature of about 36 degrees Celsius. That took about 20 minutes to do, and after that I then added it to the fermenter and then put in my Kveik Voss yeast. I went for Kveik Voss as I thought that this would be the most suitable for this beer, as Kveik Voss has quite an orangey flavour profile, and so its esters will help make more of a festive feel to it, as the orange taste works for Christmas. So I then popped that fermenter onto a heat pad to make sure that it was warm, as I'm using Kveik yeast. I then also connected a blow-off tube so that the aggressive fermentation didn't result in a huge mess in my kitchen. 10 days after that, I then bottled it, and it's time now to taste it. So here it is. It's been bottled now for about 10 days, so it's quite young, but I wanted to share it with you before Christmas, as I'm filming this about a month before Christmas Day. So come Christmas Day, hopefully this is perfectly conditioned and all of the flavors have sorted themselves out. So let's give it a taste and see if we can pick up those festive flavors. All right, well, it's not a bottle bomb, but there is definitely carbonation. Well, I think for a bottled conditioned beer that's only been bottled for 10 days, I think that's a pretty good head. Hopefully that'll be better come Christmas Day, but at the moment, I'm saying that that is perfectly fine. Can we smell Christmas then? There's definitely a cinnamon scent to it, as well as ginger. You're also getting those spicy notes that you get from Fuggle. Yeah, I think that's a very nice smelling beer. Pleased with that. So let's give it a taste. Hopefully there's not too much of a ginger taste to it, but we'll see. Really layered flavors, actually. Really interesting. Probably like the most depth of flavor that I feel like I've ever had in a beer. It's really, really interesting. There's definitely those ginger and cinnamon notes that you're getting from it, but it's not like overwhelming. I think if you're hunting it, you definitely find it, but if you were drinking this thinking it was just a standard bitter, you may not necessarily know that there's cinnamon and ginger in it, which I'm quite pleased with, as I don't want people to just sip this and go, whoa, that's Christmassy, you know what I mean? Maybe I should have gone a bit more Christmassy with this, added lactose sugar so that it was sweeter, and then added like cardamom pods and stuff that really do go into mince pies, but that'd be a completely different beer. I have to say that I think that the hops and the ginger are doing a really good job of not making it taste too alcoholic. You know, 7% beer, this is double IPA kind of territory. Well, it's not an IPA, obviously, but you know what I mean? It's like, this is high ABV alcohol, and it doesn't taste it. Which I'm pleased with. I think this is going to be perfect for Christmas Day. It could accidentally get my granddad very drunk, not realizing that it's only 7%, but it's Christmas Day. That's kind of what you're meant to do, isn't it? So yeah, I'm super happy with this. I think you'd enjoy this for Christmas Day, so give it a go. Check out this next video to learn how to make a Christmas cider.